If you're trying to find out about something new, what is the first thing that you would do? Google it, right? You don't search anything nowadays, you Google it. You don't search for the meaning of a word, you Google it. You don't search for the lyrics of a new song, you Google it. The term Google is synonymous to search. You could Google images, lyrics for a new song, finance news, news for the day, or even Google the alternatives to Google, right? But do you know there's plenty of search engines available out there? Yes. So every year, most of us try to make resolutions, right? Changes in our lives. This year, some of those resolutions, especially the physical and social ones, are not really possible or as easily doable as they were in the past years. And since these physical and social changes are difficult now, we can still make changes in our digital lives. Because believe it or not, we are more connected digitally today than we were even 11 months ago. So let's talk a bit about some search engines that may offer something different from what Google has to offer and see if we can make them our default on browsers. And talking about search engines, there's a mind-blowing bunch of them out there. They have a lot to offer nowadays. So like there's a bunch of search engines that cater to certain areas or countries only. Like if you're living in China, Baidu dominates the market, or Sogo. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. That's the runner-up. And then if you're living in Russia, Yandex is pretty popular. And then there's a bunch of search engines that are not catering to some areas, like or have to censor results in certain countries, like Yahoo or Google have to censor results in Argentina, and Google has to censor results in China. There's definitely search engines very similar to Google, like Bing, definitely similar UI, similar feel, similar speed of information lookup. I can't really tell if there's like milliseconds or microseconds of difference, but it feels pretty similar. It also personalizes based on your past searches. I think the main difference between Google and this is Bing on its homepage does not have a white background. It has a personalized background image with at the bottom recent news, which is neat. I think that's a feature Google should also have, but I think Google's minimal design is pretty neat as well. And then there's browsers like with Vivaldi and Edge, which have default search engine set to Bing. So if you're not really caring about which search engine you're using and are more interested in the search results, Bing is definitely worth a shot. Or there's Yahoo, right? Very similar feel again to Google, very similar speed of information lookup. Too much purple if you ask me, by the way. Gives you daily regional news at the top, which is pretty neat, I think. And again, personalizes based on you after a while on your past searches. I cannot really compare. I think the most usage of Yahoo that I make is on Yahoo Finance, which I believe, or at least to me, feels better than Google Finance. But we can talk more about it. I'm not really here to question that. By the way, I think this is the closest thing for me having to share screen with Shah Rukh Khan or Gal Gadot in a YouTube video. And then there's Yippee or Ask.com or Startpage.com, which I believe most people, if you used computers in 2000s, would remember as those search engines which would automatically set themselves as default search engines. Talk about AI taking over the world. But coming back to the topic at hand, all of these that I mentioned have one thing in common. They all collect information about you and possibly invade your privacy. Recently, there was a big fiasco. Let's call it the WhatsApp fiasco, where our dear Mr. Zuckerberg announced that Facebook is going to get information from WhatsApp and Instagram. This made millions of users switch to Telegram and Signal, showing that people have started deliberately looking out for their privacy, especially the digital privacy. So, keeping that in mind, here's 3 search engines that I would recommend to you: Duckduckgo, Quant, and ecosia.org. Now, before I talk about these search engines, let's see what privacy is with a search engine and how these websites collect our data. The first term that I will use is search history. Search history, simple, what you've searched for in the past. Usually your search history is saved with these websites with your date and time of the search. And with that also goes your user agent information and IP address. User agent constitutes of what browser you are using, on what device, on what operating system. Over that, if you're logged in, means they get your account information, which includes name, email address and stuff. With just the timestamp and computer information, your searches can be traced directly to you. With your account information, they know that it is you. Having this information, all searches can basically be put into a single place. A place just for you. You can get to know a lot about a person by going through their search history. And obviously, incognito doesn't help. And if this is not enough, there's a concern of these companies or websites putting all your information on the web or handing it over to law enforcement. Why would they release it to the public, you ask? AOL or American Online famously released their search terms for research. And then people figured out that the anonymity wasn't really there, which got them sued over for it. Or if not just that, sometimes these companies can get hacked or accidentally leak data, and then their data might just see the light of general public's eye. The second term that I'll give to you is search leakage. When you do a search and then click on a link, your search terms are sent to the website that you clicked on. Duckduckgo calls this sharing of personal information search leakage. So when you do a private search and then click on a link in the results, that website you're going to knows what you searched for. And not only do they know about it, they also know that you searched it. This combination of the available information about you is what raises the privacy concerns. Now obviously, if you're using Tor browser, as I talked about in the last video, you're practically impossible to track. But with growing internet speeds, Tor slowing me down is a concern for most people. And if what I just said bothers you too, switch to DuckDuckGo now. With DuckDuckGo, no information is stored about you. No personal information, not even user agent and IP address. It prevents search leakage. It routes your request in such a way that the site that you're visiting knows that you're visiting, but they don't know how you got there or what search terms you fixed to get there. And it does not at all save your search history. Me personally, I've been using DuckDuckGo for past at least 3 years, if not more, and I've seen very similar results as Google. And I can actually literally count on my fingers how many times I've had to use Google just for a different perspective on the results. Now moving on to Quant. Now Quant Search is the most efficient web search engine based out of Europe. It protects your privacy by refusing user tracking device, any user tracking device, and also ensures neutrality in its results. How does Quant protect my privacy, you ask? Quant creates a pseudonym identifier for you. That identifier is created using your user agent and the salted hash of the first 3 bytes of your IP address. Quant retains for up to 7 days the keywords entered associated to this pseudonym identifier. After that, for up to 12 months, Quant just retains the keywords which are not associated to the identifier anymore. Now the keywords are retained obviously for aggregate statistical analysis, to know something like how many times a keyword was searched in a certain period of time. It does also use the information collected from you to measure its audience and collect statistics about them. But that is done in the first 7 days of it retaining the identifier. Now obviously, if you've created an account with Quant, they will retain your information for up to 7 days after you've requested an account deletion. In summary, Quant claims that they don't keep your search history and they don't create an advertising profile to target you. And they also don't keep any advertising cookies for you. And with over 20 billion pages indexed in Quant's search, I think it counts as a decent recommendation in alternatives to Google search. Now let's move on to ecoshare.org. If you're a nature enthusiast, I would recommend you set ecoshare.org as your default search engine right now to eternity. Every time you search, you're contributing on this website to planting trees. I think the first 45 searches contribute to one tree planted, or at least that's what I see in the first few minutes of using this website. And I also like the fact that they're completely transparent with how they're using their earnings from the website, and they set apart like 80% of their share from the earnings to planting trees. Not just this, your searches on Ecosia are 100% powered by renewable energy. When you're searching, they're already planting trees that fight climate change and reduce CO2 in the atmosphere. And they accelerate the energy transition away from fossil fuels by adding solar energy to the electricity grid. And coming to privacy, their privacy policy is very similar to that of Quant's. They only keep identifiers for up to 7 days for audience statistics, and they only use the first 2 bytes of your IP address. And obviously everything internally is encrypted. With planting more trees and consistent searching, reducing the carbon footprint and making Earth more carbon neutral or carbon negative if that's a possibility, and being pretty decent with keeping your privacy, I think Ecosia is the complete package. And it's literally like saving the environment with doing what you do every day. Now, all that is okay, yes, but what would I recommend? If digital privacy bothers you, then Duckduckgo is for you. If protecting the environment with decent privacy standards appeals to you, then ecosia.org is for you. And go for Quant if you're comfortable with European standards of data protection and privacy. As usual, thanks for watching. I hope you got something new to learn today, and see you in the next one.